Early on in life, someone taught me the most important thing when it comes to business. If you're promised anything, make sure that you get it in writing. Nowadays, you can't take anyone's word for anything. I don't care what anyone says, you have to get it in writing. That way you can avoid any backlash later on. Meaning you can fall into a situation when an altercation happens and you're left with a he said, she said situation, which leaves everyone nowhere. This is why it's always best to get everything in writing, especially if you're looking to getting into the ATM business. You need a contract. Luckily for you, I'm gonna give you the exact same contract that I use for my ATM business. That way you don't struggle like I did. Make sure you stay to the end of the video so I can share with you the details on how to get the contract. For today's video, I want to share with you the most important things that should be in an ATM contract. That way you can avoid a he said, she said situation. And if you don't have these things in your ATM contract, then it can cause you hundreds or even thousands of dollars in damages or cause you massive headaches, which no one wants. Now, I want to explain this in the most easiest way ever. So I'm going to be answering 3 questions with every topic. What is it? Why is it important? And how is it going to avoid a he said, she said situation? For the very first thing that should be in a contract, and it's pretty obvious, it's called NAP. Name, address, phone number. This is important because you want to know who you're dealing with, where you're doing business at, and how you can contact this person. This is going to avoid a he said, she said situation because you know exactly who you're dealing with. And if you have any problems, you can just call them. There's situations where people just don't know who is the actual owner of the store, who they should be contacting with. This is going to avoid all of that. It's the most obvious thing that should be in a contract, so I don't think there needs further explanation besides that. Maintenance and service. What is this? In your contract, you want to explain that you're going to be maintaining the ATM. You want to make sure that you have in your contract the roles for yourself and the roles for the owner. Clearly written out. What are your responsibilities? The reason why this is important is because this is going to show the business owner that you're legit, that you know how to present yourself, and that they're dealing with someone who knows what they're doing. This is going to avoid a he said, she said situation because in case anything happens and they say, you were supposed to do this, you were supposed to do that, go to the contract. Read each other's responsibilities. Maintenance and service is going to allow you to avoid a he said situation when it comes to who's responsible for what. And it's going to put everything in writing for you so you can always go back to the contract and say, hey, this is what I'm responsible for. Let's stick to the contract. Hey, this is what we promised each other. Let's stick to the contract. Building, closing, and remodeling. What is this? There's going to be a time where the business that you decided to do business with is gonna go through some changes. This happened to me. In one of my locations, it shut down and they had to remodel. This is important because in case that were to happen to you, you know the proper procedures. Now, for a lot of people, it's different. You can charge for this or you don't have to charge for this. It all depends on you and how you want to do it. I always suggest to just put it in writing to make sure that if this situation were to ever happen and you had to move the ATM or relocate it, it costs money. It costs money to travel to the ATM. It costs labor to move the ATM. So someone has to pay for it. Some people don't want to put this in their contract because they want to be nice and they'll move the ATM for free. Totally up to you. The reason why this is important is because you're setting expectations early. That way, you're avoiding a he said, she said situation whenever they said, well, I don't know what's going to happen with the ATM. I need to relocate, blah, 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 blah. You're putting things in writing where they can give you at least 30-day notice that they're going to remodel, that they're going to be closed down. This is going to give you enough time to figure out what you want to do with your ATM. You want to go into business for the long term. You don't want any hiccups. In this industry, it can be shady at times. There's going to be people who want your location. By having a contract, you're going to be responsible for that location for many years. A lot of people can suggest this to be either 3 years or 5 years. I personally do 5 years. The reason why this is important is because you are now solely responsible for that location. And if the owner tries to find somebody else that can pay them more or do things cheaper or try to do it on their own, this stops all of that. This stops someone from stealing your location, and this makes sure that you're in this for the long haul. You're protecting yourself. On top of that, you're setting expectations for the both of you, meaning you have 3 years or 5 years to make sure that the business is running smoothly, and if it's not, then the owner of the company has an out and can find another ATM provider. This is going to avoid a he said, she said situation in case someone wants to steal your location, or in case the owner sees that you're making too much money and now wants more. You have the contract, you set the terms in there, and then they can go ahead and write out the years and renew the contract or cancel the contract. Totally up to you and totally up to the service that you provide them. But having it in writing makes it easier for both parties. Surcharge amount. What is this? The surcharge amount is how much you guys are going to be receiving in profits, how much you're going to be charging in the ATM, and what's going to the owner and what's going to you. What you also want to include in this part of the contract is the form of payment and when you're going to be paying. The reason why this is important is because everything's going to be in writing. You don't want to get to your first month and then the owner say, why aren't you paying me on the first? Why aren't you paying me this? Why aren't you doing this? Go to the contract. We agreed that I'm only going to pay you $3. We agreed that I'm only going to pay you $2. We also agreed that I'm going to pay you on the 10th. I have a couple of days to figure out how many transactions. I provide you with a piece of paper with the amount of transactions you did for the month. I give you how you want to get paid, whether it's check, cash. You guys figure it all out. The most important thing is to have this in writing. This is important because everyone wants to know how they're going to get paid and when they're going to get paid. Again, we're in the business of making money. Knowing when your money is coming in is the most important thing about this whole entire business. This is going to avoid a he said, she said situation because at the end of the month, everyone knows when they're getting paid and how much they're getting paid. Pretty simple, guys. Connection fees. What is it? Now, in order for you to run your ATM business, there's two ways you can do it. You can do it through Wi-Fi or you can do it through cellular. You want to have this in your contract that the owner is responsible for making sure that you have the proper connection, whether it's Wi-Fi or whether it's cellular. The way I do it is I have my ATMs on a cellular network. I have it in writing in my contract where the owner pays for that connectivity fee, meaning it's coming out of the first transactions. This is important because this is the cost of doing business. You don't want this to ruin how much money you're making, because there's going to be situations where the ATM is not performing and you're barely covering costs. I know some people lose money on just the connection fees because they get a bad location. This is putting the cost of running the business back into the owner, back into the ATM, where we're both playing together and we're getting rid of all of our expenses that it takes to run this ATM business. This is going to avoid a he said, she said situation whenever it comes to having some difficulties with getting the ATM running. Honestly, this isn't something that's really necessary or something that should be such a really big thing. I just put it in there, and really what I do is at the end of every single month, I just take out the amount of transaction that it cost me to have this cellular network. Plus, it's only 25 bucks. So a couple transactions takes care of that. Removal and reinstallation of the ATM. What is this? There's going to be times where something happens to the ATM and you're going to have to remove it and reinstall an ATM. The reason why this is important is because you want to allow the proper procedures. Again, it just comes down to setting the expectations. If they have to remodel, if the ATM is broken, if the ATM gets stolen, if the ATM gets theft, you want to put it in writing that you have enough time for you to get the amount of work to fix that situation in the proper manner to make sure that everything comes out right. When you have all of these things in writing, it avoids any headaches in the future. You're setting the expectations first. That way you know how to address them when the time comes. There's no he said, she said situation whenever something breaks down or you have to fix anything. There's going to be times where you run into a business where it's not being ran properly and they can go bankrupt. This is important to have in your contract Because if this situation ever happens to you, the owner is solely responsible for whatever happens to his business to stay with this business. And it has nothing to do with your ATM. Because there's times where people run into trouble. And if they run into trouble, they can lien the store, lien the business, and they might be coming after your ATM, and that's your money. Your money can go with the lien. And if you don't put that in writing, you're gonna run into a he said, she said situation. It doesn't ever happen. It rarely ever happens, but I know some people that it did happen. So in order for you to avoid any headaches, it's best just to have it in there. Lastly, you want a waiver in there. A waiver is an out for you as the business owner. Now, the reason why this is important is because I've always tell people, some locations, they're gonna suck. You're not always gonna get a good location. There's gonna be times where the location that you got is doing 1 to 5, 10, heck, less than 30 transactions a month. And for some people, it's not worth it. You're better off getting that ATM out of there and finding a new location. This is what this part of the contract does. It gives you an out. In case the owner's not doing their part, in case the ATM is not performing, this allows you to find a new location. This is gonna avoid a he said, she said situation because you're gonna be upfront with them. Hey, I tried it. Doesn't seem like this location is a good fit for us. I'm gonna have to go. Shake hands and make friends. You're avoiding the situation by just setting the expectations correctly. These are just a couple of things that should be in your ATM contract. Should all of them be included? No, but why not? This is gonna avoid any headaches in the future anyway, so why not just put them there? It's just for your protection. This is gonna help protect you and your business. Now, I did promise you a contract, so if you got to this part of the video, this is how you can get this contract. Just follow me on Instagram at ChrisMoSpeaks, shoot me a DM, and I'll send you the PDF. I'm a small channel, so I don't expect a lot of people to blow me up. But in case you don't want to DM me, I'm going to be giving you a link in the comment section or in the description section, somewhere down here, where it's a link to the Facebook group. This Facebook group has the most amount of knowledge when it comes to ATMs. It can give you a free ATM contract. It can give you a bunch of free resources on there. I'm going to put the link in the description and you can go on there, read about the ATM business, make friends, and get the contract for free without DMing me. This is actually the place where I got the contract, so I would highly suggest joining this Facebook group. But besides that, guys, if you found some value in this video, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.